Hello, everybody. You've tuned in again to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm your host, Sergeant Rich Myers with the Indiana State Police Public Information Office, District 52. We are talking again with First Sergeant Paul Hansard. Paul was with us last week talking about the Polygraph unit for the Indiana State Police. We ran out of time. It was so interesting on the information that he had and what he was talking about. So we're going to continue again this week with Paul. Paul, thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me back.
Appreciate you being here. And we're going to talk about a little bit more into the Polygraph unit. This is brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance, Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. We thank them. We thank Tom Trio for putting us on the YouTube site for the Indiana State Police, so you can catch us there on the ISP YouTube site if you want to go and see what's happening with us. So we're talking about polygraph. We were talking about how we have different polygraph examiners around the state. State police is involved with doing different departments, doing our department, doing different things. During an actual polygraph examination, what takes place?
Right. So usually an agency will set up, or our own department will set up a polygraph examination on a criminal case that they're working because they've just got to a point where there's no other leads for them to follow. So they will use us then to try to find out, like I said, to get to the bottom line. Where's the truth in this situation? So they'll have a person come into the post. Like I said, generally we'll meet them at one of those locations throughout the state. When the person arrives, we usually have them have a seat out in the lobby, and we spend some time talking to the investigator to get a little bit of information about the case. And then once we bring the person back to the polygraph suite, that's called the pretest phase of the polygraph. And we spend a lot of time getting to know them, making them comfortable, because, again, we understand that that's a very anxiety-producing event.
Sure.
You come into
it was when I was going through.
Absolutely, and I can remember mine. It's been 19 years ago. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I tell everybody I wanted to throw up before I walked into that room, and certainly after I walked out of the room. So,
you thought you were a pretty good guy walking in, and coming out, you're thinking, man, what kind of a loser am I?
That's exactly right. So we bring them in, we talk to them, we explain what's going to take place. We give them a whole overview of what the process is going to look at, and it's generally about 2 hours that we spend with them. So that first part, the getting to know them phase, we talk about the voluntariness of the polygraph. We won't test anybody that's not there on a voluntary basis. So it has to be voluntary, something they're wanting to come do. We advise them of their rights and let them know what those are right up front so that they have a clear understanding of that. And then when that's finished, we'll spend some time getting to know information about them, their background information, family history, medical history, because what we want to do is make sure they're suitable for a polygraph test. Some people are not. There's some different medical things that we would want to look at or at least have a doctor's slip for. So we'll talk to them about that. Okay. And then after we've covered that information, then I go through and give them an explanation of polygraph, a little bit more in depth than what I gave you on our last talk. Telling them about the different components that are going to be hooked up to them, letting them know what those are doing, letting them know what we're recording and looking at and how we figure that out. And then after we give them the explanation, the next thing we'll do is we'll talk about their case or the investigation that they're there for and get their point of view on that. And the reason that's important, because the very next phase we do with them is we actually come up with the questions for their test together. So we work through that. We come up with some common questions that will resolve the issue within some guidelines. But once we come up with those questions, then we take a break. And that usually lets the person go out to use the restroom, get a drink. And that's generally about an hour into that process. It gives me time as an examiner then to type their questions into the computer and have everything set up and ready for them. Then I'll bring them back into the polygraph suite, and we do what we call a demonstration test, which is letting me get the settings of the polygraph adjusted over to them. We have them write a number on a piece of paper and ask them questions about that number, and that lets me get everything adjusted over to them and shows me that they can follow directions for the test. Then we'll run them for the reason they're there. We ask those questions multiple times. We don't just do it once. We do it multiple times so that we get plenty of data that we can score. And then I'll step out and score their polygraph charts, what we used to print off in the old days, but now it's all on a computer screen. So we'll score those out and come back in. And then the post-test phase, we talk to them about the results of their polygraph exam.
Something I find very interesting that I didn't know. So you make up the questions that day?
Yes. And again, a lot of it's based upon what the person is telling us when they're in there. Now, we kind of have some guidelines. We want to know what the investigator wants to know that's pertinent information, but we also want to know where the person's at when they're coming in and what they're thinking about the case, and then we'll fine-tune those questions then.
Are these yes/no questions, or can they be open-ended?
No, all questions are yes/no on the polygraph examination. So, and again, generally it's about 9 or 10 questions that we're asking. Some of them deal directly with the case. Some of them deal with other types of things that we need to know just for the polygraph examination itself, and some baseline questions. So it's generally about 9 or 10 questions, though.
What's your average time then on a polygraph exam?
So the average for the whole examination is about 2 hours. Sometimes it'll be just a little bit less. Sometimes it'll go just a little bit longer, but on average about 2 hours.
Okay. So, and you say sometimes during your pre-interview or something like that, you might find out that they have a medical condition or something. Can they come back later if they get a slip or something?
Absolutely, and that's all we ask them. Like if they come in with a history of heart-related issues or something like that we're concerned about, we may ask them to come back with a doctor's slip, and we just reschedule another appointment, then bring them back in at a later time and run them on the test as long as the doctor says they're clear to do that.
That's interesting. So. Tell me about the Indiana State Police Polygraph Unit becoming accredited. You guys are an accredited agency now.
Absolutely. Something we're very proud of. November of 2014, we become accredited through an agency called POLIA, which is the Polygraph Law Enforcement Accreditation. Captain Sid Newton, we got to give him most of the credit for that, of getting that ball rolling. What it is, POLIA is an organization that's made up of state and local agencies overseen by the federal government, and they make sure that you're doing standardized practices in polygraph as well as scoring methods, testing techniques. All those things have been researched and validated. So they make sure that we're producing the best type of tests that we can for the jurisdictions that we serve. That accreditation process took about 2 years. So they came in, started looking at all of our case files, the types of tests we were running. They did about 4 periodic reviews during that 2-year period where they would just pull random examinations. They would score the charts, look at what kind of questions we were using, look at our videos and things like that, make suggestions on how to change, make sure that we were conforming. And then at the end of that 2-year process, is when we received our accreditation. So we were the first polygraph unit in the state of Indiana to receive that accreditation, and as far as I know to this point, still the only one with accreditation. And some of the other agencies in the United States that serve in that, so you have like North Carolina Bureau of Investigations, Pennsylvania State Police, Los Angeles Police Department is also part of that accreditation process. So something we're very proud of. All the credit, though, goes to the men and women that are working in the unit because, again, they've adapted and changed and made sure they're running the right types of tests as well.
Well, that's something to be very proud of, like you said, and not very many agencies throughout the United States have that. So that's something to have a feather in your cap for, isn't it?
Right, and they will routinely, now we're on like an every 3-year audit process, so they will routinely come back and make sure that we're still doing the things we need to do. We also sit on their board now so that we're able to have input into the organization as well. So it's a very neat accomplishment for us.
Well, what if somebody wants to become an Indiana State Police Polygraph Examiner? What do they need to do?
Great question. Great question. So what we like and what's helpful is for somebody to have some investigative background. Now, it's not necessary. It's just preferred. So when we put out the promotional information about that, because the job of a polygraph examiner is a promotion on the state police. It's a sergeant's rank. So we like to see someone come with some investigative experience because, again, that's what we're dealing with most of the time is those criminal kinds of cases. So they have to go through the normal promotional process where they have to have a written test score, and then they sit through an oral interview. And then once they become an examiner, once they receive their promotion, then we find polygraph school for them. And like I said, our 2 new guys are at the Northeast Counter Drug Training Center now. It is a 12-week school that they have to sit through. As hard as any college class that I had at Ball State, I'll say that.
I'm sure.
The first examination was about 500 questions, and they hand you that booklet, and it's about 4 hours to complete. So after that 12-week school, then you return back to the department, and at that time, then the school requires you do 30 examinations as an intern, criminal in nature. But the department, the state police department, has even more stringent standards than that. They want you to do 50 specific criminal investigations, polygraph examinations, all supervised with another examiner there sitting watching what type of test you're doing, monitoring the whole thing. And then in addition to those 50, you have to do 50 additional exams that aren't criminal, so they can be applicants or internal or those kinds of things. And then after that 100 total, you're released or become a certified examiner. So pretty stringent process to get cut loose on your own, but once you do it, it's one of the best jobs on the department.
have somebody kind of father you, or I know we have the TDY for the detective division. Do you guys have anything like that?
We do not, because it is such a technical position, and like I said, the average school, there are some that are as short as 8 weeks, but most of them are going to be that 10, 12-week average. So even if they went and had that on their own, then we still need an opening within the unit to do that.
Right.
Like I said, currently we have 5 examiners and a supervisor serving the state of Indiana.
Well, if an agency wanted to contact you guys, how do they get a hold of you?
Right. The best way to do it is contact the regional laboratory that's in their area. So again, if you're thinking Southwest, you have the Evansville Regional Laboratory. Central Indiana, then we have the Indianapolis Regional Laboratory. So 317-921-5335 is a number direct to my desk, and we can get somebody scheduled from there. Northwest Indiana, the Lowell Regional Laboratory, or Northeast Indiana, the Fort Wayne Regional Laboratory, or if they contact any of the local state police posts, they can put them in touch with one of the examiners.
And you guys are on our website, too, under the laboratory division.
Absolutely, and it gives all the contact information there on which lab for your respective county or agency that would be represented.
Now, again, you're listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids. We're talking with First Sergeant Paul Hansard from the Polygraph Unit of the Indiana State Police. I'm your host, Sergeant Rich Myers. Can you fool the lie detector?
That's a big question we always get. Can it be fooled? So,
can you put the rock in your shoes so it makes it not be right?
Absolutely. People think, and there's a lot of information out in the world about how to beat the polygraph, things you can do, or even if, as simple as what can you do to help yourself when you go in for polygraph examinations? So some of the things we've seen over the years include putting tacks in your shoes to cause that stimulated response, or flexing their muscles, coughing, or doing deep breathing. All that stuff, we train on that as well. So
Right.
we take countermeasures classes routinely. We stay up to date on the latest information that's offered, whether it's on the internet or in books or whatever. So we can catch most of that. Now, to say that it can't be beat, I'd be wrong, because there might be someone good enough to do that. Even with mental countermeasures, we've had people try that, but we're taught, again, things to look for and things to notice, so we're probably going to catch you if you're trying to do that. We have some sophisticated technology with both the polygraph chair itself and some other equipment inside the room that helps us pick up on some of those things that people might be doing as well. So it can be fooled, but we're probably going to catch you if you try it.
On the other side of that, do you sometimes find out information that you weren't going for?
Right. There's lots of, whether that's on a criminal investigation or especially in a pre-employment setting, we hear lots of different things, whether we come in and we're focused at one particular point of an investigation and the person may give us additional information about another crime or something else going on. Pre-employment settings, we hear all kinds of different things that come through those that may or may not be related to their particular employment, but might be of concern for us as an agency to look at.
Yeah. And I'm sure that many times that somebody is not talking about that event, but something else comes up during the conversation, and maybe not even concerning them, but concerning another event.
Right. And they'll talk about that and discuss that with us, and we leave that as a very open forum when they're in there with us, because, again, we're there to get the truth behind that situation, but if they have other information they want to give us as well, we're receptive to listen to that.
We got about a minute and a half. Do you discuss the results with the person?
Absolutely. We're required by the American Polygraph Association standards and both the accreditation as well that we go back and let them know the results of that. Now, there are particular cases once in a while, very rare, that the investigators say, can we hold off and do that maybe in a day or so? They have another lead they want to follow up on, so we may not let them know right then, but certainly within a day or so, they're going to hear those results of that examination, and we're required to give that to them.
Do you ever have, I don't know. I don't know if they're telling the truth. I don't know if they're not.
Absolutely. The 3 types of results we can have in a polygraph setting are no deception indicated, means the person's being truthful, and this is the opinion that we render, or that deception is indicated, means they're lying or not being truthful with us. But there's also a middle range of what we call an inconclusive or a no opinion test, which means when we're looking at that scoring scale, they don't fall on either side. They're somewhere in the middle, and we just can't render an opinion. So what we'll do at that point, that's less than 10% of the time we see those, but what we'll do is we'll just offer them another examination on a different day, bring them back in and retest them and get that conclusive result.
Well, great. Well, we're out of time. It has been so interesting. I appreciate you coming in, Paul.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Again, First Sergeant Paul Hanser of the Polygraph Unit of the Indiana State Police. You've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. I'm your host, Sergeant Rich Myers. We've been talking about the polygraph section for the last 2 weeks of the Indiana State Police Alliance. Very, very interesting information and a lot of things that I didn't know about. So make sure that you go to the show before this one on the ISP website or the YouTube site and catch us. Roadshow out.